Have you ever felt like the world was spinning around you, but something inside you refused to move with it? Like you were walking through your life wearing invisible armor no one could see, but you could feel every dent, every crack, every whisper of something sacred underneath it? Chosen one, you already know. You've always known. Not because someone told you, not because you read it in a book or heard it in a sermon, but because something inside you has always pulsed with a different rhythm, a quiet frequency that didn't match the noise of the world, a signal that kept calling you back when you tried to forget. And now, here you are, on this very day, not by accident, not by chance, but by divine appointment. August 15th, 2025 was circled in the language of your soul long before you knew what it meant. That strange ache you've been carrying, that tug at the edge of your awareness, that feeling like something is coming, even when nothing outside you seems to change. It wasn't anxiety. It was alignment. It wasn't confusion. It was the stirring of remembrance. You didn't stumble upon this video. This message found you. Through the algorithms of heaven and the divine timing of your pain, it brought you here to say what no one else had the courage or the knowing to say. You're not broken. You're becoming. You're not late. You're right on time. The world didn't prepare you for this moment because it couldn't, but your soul did. And even if you don't feel ready, something inside you is already rising. Take a breath, deeper than usual. Not the kind of breath you take to survive the day, the kind of breath you take to remember who you are, because what's coming next in this video is not just information, it's activation. It's a mirror for the sacred truth you've carried in silence. It's a whisper from the part of you that never forgot. Chosen one, you have lived lifetimes in this single body. You've died to old identities more times than you can count. You've endured heartbreaks that didn't just break your heart. They broke open the divine portal in your chest, and you kept going, even when no one clapped, even when no one saw, even when the world called your depth a weakness and your dreams a delusion. Still, you kept walking. Why? Because something in you always knew this day would come. The day you'd be seen, not for what you've lost, but for what you've carried. The day the silence would speak. The day your wounds would turn into words. You see, the world will never tell you this, but the pain you've been through was never random. The loneliness, the strange timing, the constant endings, they weren't failures, they were refinements. Divine initiations carved out by something higher, something older than time. You've been on the altar of becoming. And now the flame is ready to rise. This is not just a video. This is a remembering. A return, a revelation. If you feel a burning in your chest or a sting in your eyes right now, don't run from it. That's your soul stirring. That's your sacred compass pointing north again. You've arrived at the doorstep of a truth too big for logic, too deep for words. But still, I'll try. Because your spirit asked for this. Because you deserve to hear what they never told you, that you were never forgotten, that you were never behind, that every delay was a setup for divine alignment, and if you leave now, you may miss the very sentence your soul came here to remember. So I'm going to ask something bold of you, something sacred. If this message already feels like a message you were meant to hear, I want you to mark this moment in the comments with the number 777. Not for me, for you. To honor the divine timing of your own awakening. Because what comes next is going to touch places in you that have waited decades to be seen. It will stir memories that don't belong to this lifetime alone. It will call you back to the contract you made before you ever had a name. So breathe again, stay with me. Let the words do their work. This is the hour you were born for. This is the appointment your soul kept showing up for, even when you didn't know why. And this, right now, is the reminder you've been waiting for. What comes next will remind you why you were chosen. There's a kind of ache that doesn't come from injury, a kind of heaviness that doesn't come from exhaustion. You felt it for years, maybe even decades, a pressure in your chest, a sense that something was off, missing, or misaligned, yet you couldn't explain it. It wasn't depression, it wasn't just sadness, it was something deeper, a sacred discontent, a quiet grief for a life you couldn't name, but somehow always felt was meant for you. Chosen one, you've walked through life knowing there was something different about you, but the world never gave you the language to hold it, so you buried it. You wore the mask, you played the part. But still, that feeling followed you. Not loud, but persistent. Like a low hum behind everything. Like a whisper you almost caught but never fully heard. You tried to shake it. You chased careers, relationships, distractions, but no matter how far you ran, it waited. You see, it wasn't chasing you, it was calling you. That feeling you could never name was your soul trying to awaken you, long before you were ready to awaken. You've always sensed that something wasn't right with how everyone else seemed so satisfied with shallow things. It never made sense to you how others could ignore the suffering of the world or pretend that the surface was enough. While they laughed, you watched. While they hurried, you listened. You carried the weight of what others couldn't see. And for that, you often felt misplaced. Let me show you what that really was. It was a signal, a spiritual GPS, a divine frequency only the chosen ones can hear. And it didn't come from the outside. It came from within, from that sacred compass in your chest that still beats to the rhythm of God's voice. The world conditioned you to ignore it, to override it, to numb it with logic or noise or productivity. But it never left you. It only went silent until you were strong enough to hear it again. And now, it's rising. That feeling, the one that made you feel too sensitive, too deep, too weird, it was never a flaw. It was the early sign of your soul's assignment. You came here to break illusions, to awaken truth, to embody light in a world that feeds on shadow. But the path of awakening isn't paved in clarity, it's carved through confusion. That's why you felt like you were unraveling at times. Because you were. You had to unravel the lies you inherited before you could remember who you are. And that feeling you could never name? That was the unraveling. That was your spirit resisting the illusion of a life that was too small for your soul. Some nights you lay awake wondering what was wrong with you, why you couldn't just be like everyone else, why joy felt distant and belonging felt like a myth. But I'm here to tell you the truth no one else could give you. Nothing was wrong with you. Your soul was simply refusing to forget. Even in your darkest moments, something inside you knew this couldn't be all there is. That whisper in the dark, that strange knowing before things went wrong, that sudden urge to pull away from people or places without knowing why. All of it was the language of the divine speaking through your nervous system, through your emotional tides, through your unexplainable intuition. You didn't imagine it. You remembered it. That's the difference. And now that you're older, now that the roles you once played no longer fit, and the games you once accepted no longer feel safe, your soul is louder. This chapter of your life isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to what you've always carried. The feeling you could never name was the part of you that refused to settle, the part that wouldn't let you disappear into the crowd, the part that kept you awake when everyone else was asleep. You were being preserved, held back, sheltered, for something bigger. The reason that feeling followed you through every chapter of your life is because your calling did too. You were never lost. You were being timed, strategically, quietly, perfectly. So if the ache is louder now, it's because you're getting closer. If the questions are deeper now, it's because your answers are near. You're not going crazy. You're becoming conscious. You're not breaking down. You're breaking open. Let that truth settle into your bones. That feeling you could never name was the sound of your soul remembering who it came here to be. There was always something about you, wasn't there? Even as a child, you felt it. That invisible thread that tethered you to something otherworldly. You didn't have the words, but you had the knowing. You saw too much, felt too much, knew too much. Not in the way adults praised, but in the way that made them uncomfortable. You picked up on the sadness behind someone's smile. You noticed the heaviness in a room before anyone spoke. You cried over things no one else noticed. And slowly, the world began its work of telling you to stop. Stop feeling. Stop asking. Stop seeing what no one else could. You weren't like the others, and they made sure you knew that. You were labeled dramatic, sensitive, difficult, or distant. Maybe they told you to toughen up, grow up, stop being so weird. And piece by piece you began to wonder if something was wrong with you. But chosen one, the truth is, something was right with you. Something rare, something sacred. You were awake in a world that teaches sleep. You were born with spiritual sight in a place that worships blindness. Your soul entered this lifetime with a remembrance the world couldn't handle, so they tried to strip it from you, but they couldn't. Do you remember sitting alone and feeling the presence of something you couldn't explain? Do you remember moments when time stood still, when nature felt like it was speaking to you, when dreams carried messages you couldn't forget? Those weren't fantasies, they were signs, they were visitations. You were being reminded of who you were long before you had the language to claim it. The world told you to make sense, but your soul was wired for something deeper. You were born for mystery, for meaning, for truth that exists beyond the mind. And the child you were, gentle, deep-feeling, and painfully perceptive, was not weak. That child was the blueprint for the awakening adult you've become. Chosen one, it wasn't your imagination that made you different. It was your intuition. You weren't meant to blend in. You were meant to break patterns. That's why you felt things others ignored. That's why you asked questions others feared. That's why you couldn't just accept things as they were. From the beginning, your soul rejected anything less than truth. And that rejection came at a cost. Isolation, misunderstanding, rejection. But it also came with a gift. You never forgot the feeling of home, even when the world tried to build you a house you couldn't live in. So many chosen ones spend their lives trying to fix what was never broken, trying to mute their sensitivity, trying to shrink their insight. But I'm here to tell you, your sensitivity is sacred. Your inner depth is divine. What they couldn't understand, they tried to control. But your soul was never theirs to shape. It was God's, formed in silence, carved in mystery, chosen in love. That child who sat alone but never truly felt lonely, that was your soul in conversation with the unseen. And it never stopped talking to you. Even now you can feel echoes of that child. In the way you still hesitate to speak your truth, in the way you sometimes question your own knowing, in the way the world still makes you feel like you're too much or not enough. But let me remind you, nothing in you is wrong. You were just ahead of your time. You've always been walking with ancient eyes in a modern world. You've always had a contract written in stars, not signatures. And the child you once were knew this. The pain wasn't proof that you were broken, it was proof that you were awakening in a world still asleep. Now you're being asked to remember, not just with your mind, but with your soul, that you were never just a sensitive child. You were a sacred seed, and everything you went through, every misunderstanding, every wound, every lonely moment in your room, it all happened to protect the fire you carried, because one day, this day, you would need that fire to light the way for others. The world may not have understood you, but God did. And that understanding is rising again in you now. The child the world didn't understand is becoming the adult the world cannot ignore. There's a lie the world loves to tell, especially to those who walk with spiritual depth. It's the lie that you're behind, that you've missed your window, that the time you spent confused, broken, wandering, or healing was wasted. Chosen one, let me speak to that ache in your chest that wonders if it's too late. Let me speak to the fear that hides behind your eyes when you look back and see years that felt empty. You did not waste time. You were being aligned. Your delays were not detours. They were divine directions leading you to this exact moment in your soul's awakening. You see, when you live a life shaped by the sacred, your timing will never look like the world's. You were never meant to follow the clock of culture. You were designed to follow the rhythm of destiny. That means some seasons will feel slow, some years will feel still, some moments will feel like silence has swallowed you whole. But silence is not the absence of movement. It is the womb of creation. The years you thought were empty were actually overflowing with transformation. You weren't failing, you were being softened. You weren't stuck, you were being stored. Carl Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that is what your life has been doing all along. Every heartbreak that didn't make sense, every delay that made you question your worth, every chapter where it looked like others were moving ahead while you stood still, all of it was the curriculum of your becoming. Chosen one, you are not late. You are arriving, slowly, precisely, powerfully, in divine sequence, not societal order. You've been gathering depth while others gathered noise. You've been developing roots while others chased appearances. You've been receiving downloads while others posted pictures. There's a sacred frustration that comes with divine timing, a yearning to move when God says wait, a hunger to bloom while your soil is still being tilled. And yet, every time you tried to force your way forward, something pulled you back, not to punish you but to preserve you. That was alignment. That was grace disguised as delay. That was the unseen hand protecting what you were not yet ready to carry, because you're not just called to rise, you're called to remain once you rise. And that requires a foundation that takes years to build. Chosen one, you are not behind. You are ahead in the things that matter most. While the world rushed forward, you were busy becoming. And now, what you carry cannot be faked. Your wisdom cannot be downloaded. Your presence cannot be copied, because it was earned through sacred waiting. You carry something rare, something ancient, something real. And real takes time. The kind of time that cannot be rushed. The kind of time only the chosen ones are willing to live through. Let that truth wash over the shame you've been carrying. Let it quiet the voice that keeps comparing your life to others. You were never meant to run someone else's race. You were meant to walk your own sacred path. And even the moments where you stopped walking, those moments when grief knocked the breath out of you, when you couldn't move, couldn't pray, couldn't try, those moments weren't wasted either. They were offerings. They were sacred pauses where your soul was rewiring itself in the dark. You see, alignment doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like nothing, but underneath that stillness, everything is moving. You were never abandoned, you were being calibrated, and now you're finally feeling the pull again. You're waking up, not just with desire, but with readiness. You're no longer asking, why me, but whispering, I'm ready. You're not begging to be seen, you're stepping into being. And that shift, that quiet shift, is proof that time has not been wasted. It's been sacred. Every moment that didn't go the way you planned has made room for something greater than what you imagined. Every delay you resented is now becoming the doorway you can finally walk through. The soul that wandered is now the soul that leads. The heart that broke is now the heart that heals. You didn't lose time. You were being aligned. There comes a time in every chosen one's life when everything falls quiet. When friends drift, doors close, and nothing you try seems to work the way it used to. It doesn't matter how much effort you put in or how many prayers you speak into the dark. Nothing moves. And you begin to wonder if you've been forgotten. But chosen one, take a breath and remember, sacred things grow in silence. Your hidden years were not a curse. They were a covering, a divine hush wrapped around your life, not to hold you back, but to hold you safe. What looked like rejection was redirection. What felt like stillness was strategy. You were being removed from the noise because your soul needed quiet to heal. You were being pulled from the crowd because your spirit needed solitude to remember who you are. The womb of the unseen has always been the birthplace of the miraculous. Ask the seed buried underground. Ask the child hidden in the womb. Ask the stars waiting to be seen in the blackest night. You weren't absent. You were incubating. The isolation you fought against was actually your protection. You had to be pulled away so the sacred could take root without interruption. Chosen one, there is a holiness in being hidden. But the world has taught you to fear invisibility, to equate silence with punishment, to see stillness as stagnation. Yet God does his deepest work in the dark. He hides what is holy until the time is right. Not because you're unworthy, but because you are too valuable to be revealed prematurely. Just like the earth guards the seed until the exact season, your life has been guarded by divine timing. You didn't miss your moment. You were being prepared for it. You may not have realized it, but your silence was speaking. Every time you sat in your room feeling the ache of disconnection, something ancient was awakening inside you. Every time you questioned your purpose while others moved ahead, your spirit was deepening. Every time you walked away from what no longer felt right, even if you couldn't explain why, your soul was being refined. These years, these quiet, invisible, aching years, were not lost. They were holy. The desert is dry, but it is not empty. It is where voices become clear. It is where illusions die. It is where false identities fall off and real identity begins. It is where prophets are made, where fire falls from heaven, where water flows from the rock. And you, chosen one, have walked that desert. You have lived in the in-between, the space where nothing seems certain, but something still calls you forward. That's not confusion. That's the clarity only mystery can offer. You're not being punished. You're being purified. Let me show you what most people miss. In the silence, your discernment was sharpened. In the solitude, your soul learned the sound of truth. In the absence of applause, you found a rhythm that wasn't dependent on anyone else's affirmation. You became whole in the hollow, strong in the silence, real in the absence of recognition. And now, when you step forward, you carry something different. Not noise, not image, but substance, essence, spirit. You didn't skip steps. You took the sacred ones, the ones no one talks about but everyone feels. There is power in your path, even if it doesn't look like theirs, even if it's been slow, winding, unpredictable, especially because it has. God doesn't waste preparation. He perfects it, and he doesn't reveal his chosen ones to the world until the world is ready for what they carry. Until the chosen one is no longer seeking validation, but ready to embody truth. And you're closer to that threshold than you realize. This silence you've known, it's not going to last forever. But the version of you that emerges from it will last forever. When the time comes, and it is coming, you will understand why the years felt so long, why the waiting felt so brutal, why everything was taken away just as you thought it was beginning. You weren't being robbed, you were being rebuilt. The silence was not the absence of God. It was his embrace, a quiet place where he shaped you without distraction. And now, every tear you cried in the dark has become oil on your hands. Every unanswered question is now a key in your pocket. And the door you are about to walk through is one only the hidden can enter. The hidden years were holy, and now, so are you. There is a loneliness that has followed you your whole life, and not because you've been physically alone. You've been surrounded at times by family, by friends, by crowds, and yet something in you always remained separate, detached, misunderstood. You tried to make yourself smaller, quieter, easier to digest. But no matter how much you dulled your shine, people still saw something in you that made them uncomfortable. You weren't trying to be different, you just were. And the truth is, you were never too much. You were just more than they could carry, more than they were ready to see. Chosen one, when you carry divine presence, people can feel it before you speak. Your energy enters the room before you do, and without meaning to, without trying at all, you expose what others are hiding. Your truth threatens their illusion. Your light reveals their shadows. Your freedom reminds them of their cages. You didn't ask to trigger them. You didn't come to destroy anything. But your very being disrupts what is false. That's why some people rejected you for no clear reason. That's why you were met with defensiveness when you were only being honest. That's why relationships crumbled just when you thought they were getting deeper. You were never meant to be easily understood. You were made to be felt. And for those who are numb, your presence feels like a burn. Your depth, your vision, your silence, it all speaks to a frequency most people haven't tuned into yet. You've been called intense, complicated, unpredictable, but really, you're just awake. And being awake in a sleeping world is never easy. You've paid the cost of clarity. You've walked with the ache of not belonging. But let me remind you of something eternal. You don't belong to this world. You belong to something higher, and everything about you reflects that origin. You've always carried a sense of purpose that scared you, a weight in your chest that told you your life would mean something, even when you didn't know how. And that weight wasn't ego, it was calling. It was divine responsibility pressing against the walls of your humanity. You were never just a person trying to survive. You were a vessel being prepared, and that preparation made you different. You didn't play the games others played. You couldn't lie to yourself for long. You didn't fit the mold, even when you tried to, because you weren't made from this world's clay. The rejection you've experienced is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of your assignment. You were separated because your energy could not be diluted. You were pushed out so you could learn to stand in your truth alone. And yes, it hurt. Being the one who always saw too much, felt too much, wanted too much. But what you called too much was exactly the amount of light your soul was here to carry. And now that light is rising. Not to blind others, but to guide them. Not to destroy, but to awaken. It's time to stop apologizing for your presence, for your insight, for the way you can feel a lie in someone's tone, for the way your body recoils when the energy is wrong, for the way your spirit refuses to settle for surface-level anything. You are not too sensitive. You are finely tuned. You are not too emotional. You are divinely expressive. You are not too spiritual. You are just spiritually awake in a world that forgot how to feel. And the more you honor this truth, the more your life will begin to align. You will meet others who speak your soul's language, who don't need you to translate your being into smaller fragments, who won't flinch at your passion or retreat from your depth. They're coming. They're already being drawn to your frequency, but they can only meet the real you, not the version you created to be acceptable. The real you, the one who was born knowing things, who sees beyond faces, who hears the truth inside silence. That version of you is no longer a threat. It's a signal, and those who are meant to find you will. So breathe, chosen one. Stop trying to fit where you were never meant to stay. Stop shrinking to protect others from their own discomfort. The world may not understand you, but that's not your burden to carry. Your only task now is to embody the truth you've always held. Because when you do, you don't just liberate yourself, you light the way for others who've been hiding too. You were never too much. You were exactly enough for the purpose you were born to fulfill, and the ones who are meant to walk with you will never ask you to be less. There is something sacred that lives inside you, something ancient and quiet, something that never forgot. Even when you did, even when the world pulled you away from yourself, when logic shouted louder than longing, when survival became more important than soul, this part of you remained. You see, chosen one, your intuition never left. Your inner knowing never died. It just waited. It waited in the shadows of your decisions, in the corners of your silence, in the ache behind your eyes when everything looked fine but felt wrong. The compass in your chest still works. It never broke. It never lost signal. It just needed you to come home. You've always had moments where you just knew. When someone spoke and you felt a heaviness they never said. When a place felt wrong before anything happened. When you had a dream, a flash, a whisper, and weeks later it unfolded in front of you. That wasn't fantasy. That wasn't coincidence. That was the voice of your spirit speaking in symbols, in senses, in the softest language of truth. The world taught you to doubt it, to dismiss it as fear, imagination, emotion. But let me tell you now, what the world mocked, heaven marked. You were given divine guidance before you could spell the word intuition, and you still have access to it now. What has always made you feel strange, your sensitivity, your gut feelings, your spiritual dreams, is not your weakness. It's your map, and it's time to remember how to use it. The body you walk in is not just flesh. It is antenna. It is altar. It is translator of messages that move beyond words. When your chest tightens, when your stomach churns, when your energy shifts, listen. That is not anxiety. That is divine instruction. That is your compass, pointing away from what would harm you, or back toward what you abandoned. Chosen one, the world runs on speed, but your soul speaks in stillness. You won't hear your guidance in the noise. You'll find it in the quiet, in the moments you stop scrolling, stop comparing, stop proving, in the pause between breaths, in the place between thoughts. That's where your compass recalibrates. That's where the direction returns. You don't need to be told what to do. You need to trust what you already know. That whisper, that pull, that magnetic nudge, that's the divine reminding you of your path. And you've known it all along. Even in your confusion, your soul was guiding you. Even in the mistakes, your spirit was rerouting you. Every wrong turn taught your compass to speak louder. Every misalignment taught you the vibration of truth. You were never lost. You were just being taught how to feel your way home. And now, you're being invited to trust again. Not blindly, but deeply, because there is a thread in the dark that leads you back to light. There is a wind that only your soul can feel, and it is rising, calling, leading. You don't need to beg for answers anymore. You don't need to seek a sign in every corner. The sign is already within you. The answer is not out there. It's in the quiet place within you that already knows. The mind may question, but the body always remembers. The soul always knows. And when you start listening to that compass again, things will begin to shift. Doors will close before you walk through them. People will fall away without chaos. Opportunities will appear with ease. That's not magic. That's alignment. That's what happens when a chosen one stops arguing with their own knowing. So breathe and place your hand on your chest. Feel the rhythm that still beats in harmony with heaven. Feel the pull that still aligns with truth. That is your compass. That is your God-given guidance. You've had it since before the beginning, and it's never stopped speaking. All you need to do now is trust what you already know. Listen to the part of you that feels safe in stillness. Follow the nudge that doesn't need to be explained. The compass in your chest still works, and it's pointing you home. There is a quiet shift happening in your spirit. You feel it, even if you can't name it. a gentle sense that something is ending, even while life on the surface seems the same. A feeling that you're being pulled away from what used to feel like home, even if no one else around you understands why. Chosen one, this isn't confusion. This is recall. You are being summoned, not by the world, but by the divine. And it is not an idea. It is a knowing, a deep, unshakable awareness that the season you've been in is over, that the chapter has closed, even if the book is still in your hands. You're not imagining the distance you feel from people you used to be close with. You're not wrong for sensing that your spirit no longer fits in the spaces you once belonged. What you're feeling is the early tug of your next assignment. The recall doesn't begin with thunder. It begins with stillness, with discontent, with the soft grief of releasing what no longer aligns with your vibration. You are being spiritually relocated, and not everyone will be recalled at the same time. Some souls are still learning lessons in the field, but you, chosen one, have reached the edge of your current terrain, and your soul knows it. It's why conversations feel hollow, why small talk feels exhausting, why the familiar now feels foreign. This is not depression. This is preparation, a divine weaning from what no longer carries your frequency. You're not running away from life. You're being called deeper into it, into the truer version of it, into the place where your voice doesn't echo back silence but meets resonance. This moment, this internal unraveling, isn't chaos. It's calibration. Your recall began when your spirit stopped pretending, when your truth could no longer sit quietly behind your smile. You're not walking away from people because you're heartless. You're walking away because your heart has outgrown the space. You're not rejecting old roles because you're ungrateful. You're releasing them because they're complete. When a soul contract is fulfilled, the soul knows, and yours does. That's why the pull is so strong. Why no matter how much you try to reason with yourself, something keeps nudging you out of the old and into the unknown. This is sacred transition. This is what happens when heaven opens the next gate and your feet start to move before your mind understands. Let the shift happen. Let the silence deepen. Let the relationships fall away without needing an exit speech. You are not abandoning anyone. You are obeying a sacred inner directive. And the sooner you stop resisting the recall, the smoother the passage will become. There's no map for this journey. Only faith. Only intuition. Only the soul's quiet yes. You may not know where you're going, but trust that the pull is precise. The same force that aligned stars is aligning your steps. The same voice that whispered your name before you were born is now calling you forward. You were never meant to stay in one version of yourself. You are an evolving temple, a shifting light. And some people, some places, some roles, they were only meant to walk with you for a time. Not because they were wrong, but because they were right for a season that has ended. Now the air is changing, the tide is turning, and your spirit knows it's time. You don't need permission. You need peace. And peace comes when you stop apologizing for being the first to feel the shift. Not everyone will understand your recall. Some will think you're distant, cold, unrealistic. But they're not supposed to understand. They're not hearing what you hear. They're not feeling what you feel. They're not being moved by what's moving you. And that's okay. Let them stay, you go. Let them rest, you rise. Let them hold on, you release. There is a sacred solitude in being among the first to walk through the veil. But on the other side, there is light. There is clarity. There is your next becoming. So take one more breath and trust the whisper that says, it's time. Time to release the fading. Time to follow the pull. Time to walk away not in bitterness, but in blessing. You are not running. You are returning to yourself, to your purpose, to the divine rhythm that's always guided your feet. You are not being dramatic. You are being recalled. And the gate is already open. There will come a moment when those who overlooked you, will start searching for the very presence they once ignored. When those who dismissed your depth will find themselves lost in shallow waters, craving the sound of your voice, the warmth of your insight, the clarity of your presence. But by then, you will have become something they can no longer reach, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because the transformation you've undergone has lifted you to a frequency their old version can't follow. Chosen one, they'll look for you, but you'll be gone. This isn't a disappearance, it's an ascension. It's what happens when your healing finally matures into peace, when your inner work becomes your outer radiance, when your presence no longer leaks energy trying to be understood. You didn't leave to escape them, you left to find yourself. And in doing so, you became untouchable. The same people who thought they could delay your rise with silence, who mistook your gentleness for weakness, will one day wonder how they missed the moment you outgrew the box they placed you in. You see, they were used to the version of you that waited, the one that explained, the one that stayed. But that version has completed its purpose. You're not angry. You're aligned. You're not bitter. You're free. And that freedom glows. It's the kind of light that draws attention, but no longer asks for it. The kind of presence that turns heads, not because you're performing, but because you've returned to yourself. That kind of radiance cannot be chased, it must be witnessed. And when they try to come closer, they'll feel the space between who they were when they knew you and who you've become in their absence. It will sting, not because you hurt them, but because your evolution revealed what they refused to grow into. Chosen one, there's a point in every sacred journey when your absence becomes more powerful than your presence ever was. When silence speaks louder than explanation, when peace becomes your boundary, and when the version of you they remember is no longer available, no matter how much they apologize, regret, or pretend to understand. You are not required to shrink back into old shapes just to make them comfortable again. You are not obligated to revisit the places where you had to beg to be seen. You've graduated from that timeline. What once hurt you no longer holds you. What once confused you no longer calls you. You've crossed the invisible threshold between who you were and who you are now. And on the other side, you're unrecognizable. Not because you changed everything, but because you remembered everything. You remembered your worth, your light, your path. And now the ones who laughed, questioned, avoided, or forgot will start to search. But they'll only find your echo. They'll only find your imprint. The real you will be far beyond the frequency they still live in. They will say you disappeared. They will say you moved on too fast, but only you and the divine know how long you waited. How many times you tried to stay. How often you watered a connection with tears while praying for reciprocity. You didn't leave suddenly. You left silently, gradually, gracefully, until there was nothing left to hold on to but truth. And the truth was, you outgrew what they were never willing to grow into. So when they reach for you with old expectations, bless them. But don't go back. When they suddenly see your value, acknowledge it. But don't shrink to be reachable again. When they tell stories about who you used to be, smile, because they'll never understand who you've become. The butterfly they can't catch, the flame they can't hold, the soul that slipped through their hands while they were busy looking elsewhere. You don't owe them closure. Your growth was the closure. You don't owe them explanation. Your silence is the explanation. You don't need to return just because they now recognize the treasure they lost. You've already been claimed by destiny, by healing, by the divine hand that shaped your path long before they ever entered it. Chosen one, take one last look at what you've released. Breathe it out and keep walking. They'll look for you in the familiar places, but by then you'll be somewhere new, somewhere sacred, somewhere only those who've done the inner work can follow. They'll look for you, but you'll be gone. There comes a moment in the life of every chosen one when survival is no longer enough. When waking up just to make it through the day begins to feel like a betrayal of something deeper. You begin to sense that you were never meant to just heal, you were meant to lead. Not in the way the world defines leadership, but in the sacred sense. The kind of leadership that comes from remembrance, that emerges not from wanting to be seen, but from seeing clearly. And this, chosen one, is where you now stand. Not at the edge of another survival cycle, but at the threshold of sacred power. The kind of power that is rooted in presence, not performance. You've spent years releasing what was never yours to carry, shame that didn't belong to you, guilt that was passed down, expectations that only kept you small. And with every release, something deeper in you has begun to rise. A voice that no longer shakes when you speak your truth. A presence that no longer disappears when someone disapproves. A knowing that no longer needs permission. That is your power returning. But not in a flash. In quiet waves, in subtle reclamation, in the way you now say no without needing to explain, in the way you no longer abandon yourself to belong to others. The world taught you that power meant control, that to be powerful, you had to dominate, outperform, win. But your soul remembers differently. Your soul remembers that power is stillness. That power is the way your energy speaks before your mouth opens. That power is in the way you refuse to betray your truth, even when it costs you comfort. And now, this deeper power is activating inside you. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. Through the fire, through the dark, through the sacred ache of becoming. There is something dangerous about a chosen one who no longer fears their own light. Something liberating, something magnetic. You don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. Your alignment speaks louder than your explanation. Your presence makes an impact that words could never match. And those who once misunderstood you will begin to wonder how you've become so clear, so certain, so radiant. But what they don't see are the years you spent in the dark with only your spirit to guide you. What they can't know is the depth it took to get here. This is not the kind of power that comes with applause. It's the kind of power that comes with solitude. It's the kind of power you find when the opinions of others no longer shake your inner compass, when you stop negotiating with your purpose. When you stop diluting your vision to fit into systems you were never designed for. The soul's return to sacred power is not a performance. It's a remembrance, a falling away of every lie you believed about your worth, a rising into the truth that you have nothing left to hide and nothing left to fear. Chosen one, the world is shifting, the energy is changing, and those who have done the deep inner work, those who have allowed themselves to be broken open and rebuilt in truth, are being called forward now, not to preach, but to embody, not to impress, but to illuminate. You don't need a platform to carry presence. You don't need a title to be anointed. You just need to walk as the one who remembers. And every step you take in truth becomes a light for someone still walking in the dark. You may feel the pull to speak more, share more, step into more. You may feel the old version of you trembling in the background, wondering if you're ready. But hear this. You are not the same. You've passed through too much to go back to playing small. You've buried too many illusions to keep pretending you don't see. And now the divine is saying, rise, speak, lead, not for validation, but for alignment. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs remembrance. It needs grounded light. It needs chosen ones who have been refined by the quiet, not addicted to being seen. Your power is not in how loudly you speak, but in how fully you embody what you say. It's in how you listen, how you love, how you hold your boundaries, how you protect your peace, how you discern without judging, how you walk away without resentment. This is divine maturity, and it cannot be faked. The fire that shaped you gave you a voice that can't be silenced, a presence that can't be faked, a spirit that can't be manipulated. You've stepped into the kind of power that doesn't need to demand respect, because it is respect. Let yourself rise, even if your knees shake. Let yourself speak, even if your voice quivers. Let yourself take up space, even if it feels new. You've done the work. You've faced the mirror. You've answered the call. And now, all that's left is to embody it. The sacred power that lives in you is not here to control others. It's here to align you. And when you are aligned, everything you do becomes a prayer. Every step becomes a sermon. Every breath becomes a declaration. I remember who I am. So as you walk into this new season, walk with your head high, not from ego, but from clarity, not from pride, but from peace. You are not here to convince anyone of anything. You are here to carry truth in your bones and let that truth speak through your presence. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be real. And when you're real, those who are meant to find you will. They won't need an explanation. They'll recognize the vibration. The soul's return to sacred power is not about arriving somewhere. It's about remembering that you've always been the vessel. The light was never outside of you. It only needed you to stop searching for it in places that could never hold it. And now that you've come home to yourself, the light can flow again. The power can rise again. And the mission can begin again. Not as striving, but as surrender. Not as effort, but as embodiment. This is who you've always been. This is what you came for. This is the hour to walk in it. Chosen one, take a deep breath. The kind that sinks all the way into your belly, that melts the walls you didn't know you were still holding up. Because this is the part your soul has been waiting for. This is the moment where everything comes full circle. Not in logic, but in knowing. Not in answers, but in remembrance. You were never lost. You were just becoming. And all this time, the delay was not a detour. The silence was not punishment. The ache was not failure. It was all preparation. It was all alignment. It was all God. You've been carrying the weight of a divine assignment wrapped in confusion. You've cried in rooms where no one could hear you and prayed prayers that felt like they never made it past your ceiling. But every moment was heard, every tear was counted, every breath of surrender was folded into the greater plan. There is nothing wasted, nothing forgotten, nothing broken beyond repair. You've passed through the fire, you've walked through the valley, and now the oil that has been forming in your silence is ready to flow. You're not who you used to be. And that's the proof that it all meant something. The signs are real. The shift is now. That strange feeling you've had lately, the dreams, the sensations, the sudden endings, it's all confirmation. You've arrived at a divine threshold, and everything behind you has shaped the strength you now carry. The pain made you tender, the silence made you wise, the rejection made you sovereign. You didn't just survive, you transmuted. You alchemized grief into gold. You turned emptiness into sacred space. And now you are ready to rise, not in ego, but in essence. Don't be surprised if you begin to feel lighter. Don't be surprised if the things that used to hook into your spirit begin to lose their grip. You're shedding what no longer belongs to this new frequency. Let it fall. Let it dissolve. Let it exit quietly, without drama. You've been chosen to walk forward uncluttered, unburdened, and unmistakably aligned. The path ahead won't always be easy, but now you walk it with remembrance, with trust, with clarity. The compass in your chest is no longer muffled. The fire in your bones is no longer flickering. You are home within yourself. This was never about fame, validation, or being understood. It was about truth, about returning to the original agreement your soul made before time touched your body. And that agreement is awakening now. So as this moment settles into your bones, mark it with sacred intention. If your soul felt the truth in this message, comment the number 1, 111, or 333 below. Not for me, but for you. To seal this awakening, to say yes to this chapter, to declare, I remember. Because you do. Let these words wrap around you like warmth. Let this space remain open for you, no matter how noisy the world becomes. When the world gets too heavy, when the road gets too quiet, when your heart forgets what it knew just yesterday, come back here. Come back to this. Come back to rest your soul. Because no matter what unfolds next, one truth remains unshakable. You were never lost. You were always becoming. And now, you are ready.